Good evening, everyone. The time is 6 o'clock. We're going to begin with our legislative caucus and then move to our legislative session meeting. Going to begin the meeting with our call to order. Next, we'll have roll call. The invocation will be led by Councilman Rodriguez. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilwoman Daniels. Communications this evening, there is a change from what's noted on the agenda. We will have an introduction of the new budget manager. Next, we will move on to courtesy of the floor, followed by approval of minutes. Council members, please review the minutes from the legislative session held on March 22nd, 2022. Next, reports of committees. We will hear a report from Chair Daniels on the work session of April 5th, 2022, a report from Chair Majors on the work session of April 5th, 2022, and a report from Chair Rodriguez on the work session of April 5th, 2022. We do not have any ordinances for first reading, nor do we have any ordinances for amendment. In terms of ordinances for final passage, Bill 4 of 2022, Bill 5 of 2022, and Bill 6 of 2022 will all be voted upon. Resolutions, Resolution 23 of 2022 will move to the Budget and Finance Committee. Is there any old business, council members?
I don't know if this is possible, but two things first. Do we have like an update on what's happening with the Treasury? I've received several complaints that the office was closed when residents went to the office.
Mhm.
And the second one is if there's more information as to why the recycling bins in Uptown Plaza, why we decided to implement other options.
Okay. Thank you. Any other old business?
I can explain the Uptown Plaza piece
Okay.
just because somebody else reached out to me and I asked. I guess it was becoming a hot spot for illegal dumping. So when I lived there and tried to recycle there, often there was a lot of additional trash that was being dumped there. So it'd been an issue for some. So they figured out a resolution to that. That's why they stopped the recycling.
Sure. Thank you. Any other old business?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah,
That's
just
okay.
a quick note, just making a request, if we haven't received it already, I haven't seen it yet, the quarterly report from the police for the first quarter of 2022.
Thank you. Any other new business? Okay. We did have an executive session prior to our legislative session this evening to discuss legal matters. Mr. Petrosky, could you please call the roll?
Ms. Daniels,
Here.
Ms. Green,
Present.
Mr. Madsen,
Here.
Mr. Majors,
Here.
Ms. Rawls,
Present.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Present.
Ms. Bowers.
Present. Thank you. The invocation this evening will be led by Councilman Rodriguez.
I'd like to take a moment just to reflect on lives we lost to senseless gun violence in our city. And as a body and your local legislators, we are, it's on our radar and we will do the best we can if we could have a moment of silence for those that we've lost recently. Thank you.
Thank you. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilwoman Daniels. Thank you. As I mentioned during our caucus, we will have a change in our agenda for communications this evening. I would like to invite Ms. Marita J. Kelly, Director of Financial Management for the city, to introduce our new budget manager. No problem. If you could please speak into the mic so everyone can hear
Hear
you.
me better now?
A little bit. Is it on? Or can you turn it up?
It's on,
towards
you
you?
have to speak. directly.
Okay, there you go. Okay, very good. Thank you. Yes, I'm very honored to introduce our new budget manager, who happens to be a city resident, longtime, lifetime city resident, and also a graduate of John Harris High School and a graduate of Bloomsburg University with an extraordinary background in accounting and budgeting. So we're very grateful. His name is Timothy Brooks, and Mr. Brooks can tell you a little bit about himself.
Well, to reiterate what Marita said, graduated class of 2000, 2006 graduate of Bloomsburg University. Got 2 boys right now. Hopefully that's it. A 6-year-old and a 7-year-old and a 16-year-old. And some of my activities I enjoy are just fishing and enjoying outdoors.
Nice. Well, thank you so much. We look forward to working with you and welcome. This time we will move to courtesy of the floor. Is there anyone on my right who would like to offer public comment? Seeing no one, anyone in the middle?
Good evening, members of council. I'm Les Ford. I live at 2033 Bellevue Road in Harrisburg. I've lived here for over 25 years. I am the director of the Heinz Senior Center. I've done that for over 10 years. I have probably had one of the most challenging periods in the history of that organization and that facility, being hit by COVID. So I'm here tonight to bring council's attention to the current situation of our community, our seniors in our community, and more specifically, the Heinz Medical Senior Center. That center has been a touchstone in Harrisburg for over 40 years. It started out as the Uptown Center. It became the Heinz Medical Center, in part named after one of the august members of City Council historically, Mim Miniker. It took on that title in '92. And we are still there. We are still trying to do the work that needs to be done for our senior population. I would like to bring council's attention to an article I provided. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the one I was looking for. This is a bit of a substitute. There was a recent article in Fortune magazine detailing the particular severe impact of COVID on seniors. So I did find a similar article from the Commonwealth Foundation, and I provided that to council. I hope at some point we'll have an opportunity to discuss that more at length. But I'm here on behalf of the Heinz Medical Senior Center to point out, to emphasize the fact that Heinz has a long history of service. We want to continue that effort as we go forward, but we need help, to be very clear. I'm here tonight because my seniors are coming to me every day and asking, when are you going to open? And my mantra is always the same. As soon as we get sufficient funding to carry the organization out of this crisis period. We had fundamentally a hand-to-mouth existence prior to COVID. COVID has exacerbated that situation. And to be very blunt, I don't see any way the Heinz Center can open up again without additional infusion of operating funds. I have appeared before council. I have obtained funding from the city of Harrisburg municipal government over the years for capital projects, and I'm grateful for that. My seniors are grateful for that. We have capital funding in the pipeline now to refurbish our bathrooms, which have been much in need of that for years. Combination of HUD money from the city and Impact Harrisburg money has given us the sufficient funds to start that project. It should start within the next couple of weeks. We have other capital needs, but I don't want to talk about those right now. I want to talk about operating funds. If the Heinz Center is to continue to provide the level of service that it has provided historically over the years, and specifically during COVID, we're going to need assistance directly from the city. We get our principal operating budget from the county. They have a county-wide obligation. They seek to be even-handed in the distribution of that. But as you know, Harrisburg is the population center in Dauphin County, and Harrisburg by far has the largest population of senior citizens. So over the years, I have repeatedly entreated with the city to provide matching funding to the county's money for operating funds. I'm still carrying that flag. I'm still hoping to plant it and have it bear fruit. I'm hoping that the municipality of Harrisburg will step up, in particular during this COVID period, to assist us in reopening. Let me just give you some of our activities during COVID. We have not been asleep. We have been underfunded, but we have done what we can do. We are probably the largest independent Meals on Wheels distributor in Dauphin County. I can't verify that, but probably we are. At the beginning of COVID, we were putting out about 40 meals a day. And I will say something about putting out meals. It involves for us the last mile. I worked for AT&T for 10 years, and I talked in the communications arena about the expense of the last mile. Running long lines for telecommunications is expensive, but running that phone line from that pole in the old days to that house was called the last mile. That was the most expensive activity. The same exists with engineering in terms of water distribution, sewer, any of those engineering projects that support our population. That last mile is what costs the most. We provided that last mile. The meals came up in bulk from York. Our people, my staff, and a few dauntless volunteers put those meals out day in and day out, and we've been doing it for 2 years. And there's been no additional money to fund that. We have taken money from other sources. Our volunteers have graciously agreed to drive that last mile, even with gas prices going up. They're still doing it. But to give you some perspective, we started out at the beginning of the pandemic about 40 meals a day. When the first 6 months of the pandemic, we went up to 60 meals. Okay, and we're back down to about 45 now. But rounding it at 45 for 2 years, 5 days a week, we have put out 24,750 meals. That is a lot of driving. That is a lot of time, both for volunteers and staff. That is a lot of expense. We cannot continue to do that without looking to other sources for operating funds. Right now, I don't have a janitor. If I am to rehire staff, a janitor and an activities director, I will need operating funds to do that. Not capital funds, operating funds. So as we go forward with our municipal plans for the American Rescue Plan, I want to entreat the city of Harrisburg, its municipal government, to fund the Heinz Center at an appropriate level. As far as I'm concerned, it would be commensurate with what the county puts in. I've always tried to get us to match it. I'm here again to ask for that. So I did bring an article, and it talks about the impact that COVID has had, the economic impact that COVID has had on seniors. And it is disproportionately hitting minority seniors. This is a minority, the majority minority city. Okay, but at the Heinz Center, we have Black, white, Hispanic, and Asian. Traditionally, we have had. We service anybody who comes through that door. We service people from all over the city and the outlying area. So we're doing the work. What we're asking from the city is support, financial support to continue to do that work. We have delivered tons of food in addition to the Meals on Wheels. We have continued our food pantry program every year, every week. And we have participated in the CRB box distribution program. Councilman Rodriguez will testify to that because he was up there in the beginning and he's still involved with that. We're still involved with that. We have put out tons, literally tons and tons of food through those two programs, the crisis relief box program and the food pantry programs. We're still running our food pantry. I can tell you every week we get more people in coming to look for food, subsistence living in this town. So we need to move beyond that subsistence living and get more on an even keel, perhaps back to where we were prior to the epidemic. But remember, seniors were disproportionately impacted by financial hardships prior to the epidemic. We are now in the basement. I would use more colorful language, but I don't want to be distracted. But we need help. We're looking to the city, municipal government of Harrisburg to step up. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the middle who would like to offer public comment?
Good evening, Laura Harding, 2246 North 3rd Street. I would like to start out by, in case you weren't aware, the special zoning hearing last week, the daycare owner at 2810 Green Street was approved with the assistance and support of Camp Curtin Neighborhoods United. And I want to also thank Council President Daniels and Councilman Majors for their assistance with that as well. I'm here to talk about the amendment, the Bill 6/2022, which is for the recording of the Planning and Zoning Board. I have concerns about the last sentence in Clause E, which says if there is not compliance with Section A, then minutes will be produced. And I view this as a loophole to get out of recording the meetings. The Sunshine Act already requires that all minutes be taken and produced for all meetings, and that is listed in Clause C. So this is just a way for our rogue zoning board to collude and find a way to not record a meeting that they don't want people to see, which is exactly what happened with the daycare owner, because Matt Pianka at the start of that meeting asked if the meeting was being recorded, and that was the meeting that he did not disclose the conflict of interest. So I'm here to ask that before you vote on this tonight, that you remove that last sentence that allows for minutes to be produced instead and in lieu of recording the meeting. Because what else is the point of this amendment if you're going to include a loophole? Also, Neil Grover stated at the workshop last week that this would require an additional 2 meetings to be recorded per week, and that is incorrect. It's 2 per month. The Planning Commission meets once per month and the Zoning Board meets once per month. So it's only 2 additional meetings. I'd also like to bring your attention to the fact that financial interest statements are required to be filed 10 days before an official body or approves or rejects a nomination. And none of the new zoning board members have filed statements of financial interest, nor have 2 attorneys that have been logging billable hours under the solicitor contract. Those attorneys are Michael O'Connor and Matthew Boogley. Also, our highest paid city employee, the new business administrator, has not filed a statement of financial interest. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the middle that would like to offer public comment? Please state your name and your address.
I'm actually not a resident of the city. I'm a school teacher at John Harris High School. And I'm a friend of Rafael Rivera's. I know everybody notices what's going on in the city with.
Sir, if you could just state your name for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry, Gerald Cameron. And like I said, I'm not a resident of the city, but I am a school teacher at John Harris High School. I know everybody sees what's going on in the city with the youth. I see it every day at the high school, the violence, kids fighting in the streets, the shootings going on in the city. And I just wanted it recorded that myself, other teachers at John Harris, and community members in the city are working to trying to get stuff started for the summer to get kids off of the streets and try to have them have some positive adult role models. And I just wanted that recorded for the record so that, when the time comes, when we do come to you guys, that you guys are aware of the programs and the things that we're trying to get started, just to put it out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the middle? Seeing no one, anyone to my left that would like to offer public comment? Seeing no one, we will move to the approval of minutes. Council members, are there any revisions to the meeting minutes from the legislative session held on March 22nd, 2022? Hearing none, the minutes will stand approved. Reports of committees. Our first report this evening will be from Chair Daniels on the work session of April 5th, 2022. Chair Daniels?
Thank you. Because it's not, can everyone hear me? I think I get the most complaints for people not hearing what I say. So I'm going to try to be better. So the Community and Economic Development Committee met on April 5th to review the land development plan submitted by Radon Construction. The land development plan sought to secure a special exception and for property 100 North 13th Street and a consolidation of lots 112 North 13 and 109 and 109 and a half Linden Street into the same parcel. The special exception was to allow the builder to convert the property, which is a historic building, into 12 residential rental family units. There were some, in addition to the special exception to convert the property into multifamily home, there was relief granted for the parking requirements, in particular 2 parking spaces. And in exchange, the owner of the property would convert a subsection of the parcel into a quasi-public space where public recs could be developed, and it could be a very small green space in the neighborhood. So the applicant accepted all of the conditions that were offered. However, the applicant was only represented by their architect, and we had other substantive questions about the project. So I decided to postpone decision on the application until the actual owner of the project appears before council and can give us more substantive answers to questions about the project that they're developing. So at the next workshop, the architect reassured us that the owner would be there and we would be able to ask additional questions.
Thank you. The next report we will hear this evening is from Chair Majors on the work session of April 5th, 2022. Chair Majors.
Thank you, President Bowers. On April 5th at 7:25 p.m., the Building and Housing Committee held a work session to consider 3 bills that are on the agenda today. Bill 4 of 2022, which is the ordinance appropriating the ESG or Emergency Solution Grants program funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2020 and 2021, and authorizing expenditure of such funds. Bill 5 of 2022, ordinance appropriating the Development Block Grant Program funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal years 2020 and 2021. And Bill 6, an ordinance amending Chapter 2-501 Boards, Commission, and Authorities of Title II Administrative Code to provide for the recording of meetings of the Harrisburg Zoning Hearing Board and Harrisburg Planning Commission. Regarding Bill 4 and 5, which is the ESG and CDBG money, Director Hill of the Department of Building and Housing provided us with an overview of those funds. The department had an influx of money from the Federal CARES Act, which is why we are now appropriating these monies, because they were focused for the last 2 years on pushing out and helping our community through the Federal CARES Act dollars. So organizations that will be receiving ESG funds from 2020 and 2021 program years include the Capital Area Coalition on Homelessness, Christian Churches United, Shalom House, YWCA, and there are unallotted funds within that program of $55,529. We have 6 years to use those funds, so we are working with the department on whether we are going to just ask the organizations to come back and amend their report or do another round of funding to have additional organizations apply to use those funds. With respect to Bill 5, which is the CDBG money, we have 2 years of program funds to be used, and organizations that will be recipients of those dollars include Justice House of Hope, LHAC, the PA Immigration Refugee Women's Network, Salvation Army, the Worship Academy, as well as the Centers for Employment Opportunities, AJB, Drug and Alcohol, Young Professionals of Color, Greater Harrisburg, the Rock Church, and the Justice House of Hope program. Additionally, we will be using those funds in typical ways that the city has used them in the past, which is for debt service, public improvements, and housing programs and demolition. The city has 8 years to use those funds, and we have an access, additionally, we will also be having funds go towards the Dauphin County Library system. Unallotted funds in that program include $77,680. And similar to ESG, we'll be working with the department on whether we will look to have those organizations reapply and amend their report to disperse those funds or open it up for another round of funding. I've asked my colleagues to be supportive of moving Bill 4 and 5. Bill 6, which is to allow for the recording of the Harrisburg Zoning Hearing Board and Planning Commission meetings. Council President Bowers, this is a city council request as we are looking to improve our transparency of all of our boards and commissions within the cities to allow for the recording of those meetings to occur. We heard from one of our communication manager, Asher Johnson, who will be doing the recordings of those meetings and about the additional time that may be necessary to do those recordings. We will be working with the finance director to determine how much additional funds will be needed, but that can be done at a later time. But Asher has made us aware that he is available to do those recordings, and we will work out any additional appropriation needs to be done at a later date. This is an opportunity for our city to improve that, as the zoning hearing board transcripts can take over 45 days to be processed. So we want to be able to post these on our city's YouTube page, WHBG 20, so that the residents have an opportunity to view these meetings if they are not able to attend. And I urge my colleagues to support Bill 6 of 2022. And that concludes the report of the Building and Housing Committee. Thank you, President Bowers.
Thank you, Chair Majors. The last report we have this evening is from Chair Rodriguez on the work session of April 5th, 2022. Chair Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam President. Good evening. On April 5th of 2022, the Public Safety Committee met to discuss Resolution 20 of 2022. Resolution 20 of 2022 is a resolution authorizing the City of Harrisburg to negotiate and enter into a professional services agreement with the Research Foundation of the City University of New York on behalf of the National Network for Safe Communities at John Jay College to provide consulting services to help reduce gun violence in Harrisburg. I'd like to first thank former Director White and everyone that played a role in bringing these opportunities to the City of Harrisburg. Speaking for the administration was Ms. Chardanne Houston, Commissioner Carter, and crime analysts from the City of Harrisburg's Police Department. During the work session, it was evident that there was a difference in the understanding of what the community interventions could be and/or the specific services that John Jay College would provide. Exhibit A informs us on the initial consultation phase through the grant funding awarded to the City of Harrisburg. The Public Safety Committee would like the opportunity to speak with representatives from John Jay College to be informed on possibilities or how much revenue it would take for implementation after. The materials used for research was the National Network for Safety's Community at John Jay College's website at https://nnscommunities.org. Also, the manuals for the same website that were quoted is Support and Outreach White Paper and Group Violence Intervention and Implementation Guide. As the Chair of Public Safety, a request was made opposing to add this to today's legislative session until council can be provided with more accurate information and make an educated decision. I look forward to working in unison with our administration and fellow colleagues on council to bring our residents answers and solutions to the current spike in gun violence. And that completes the report from the work session on April 5th of 2022 from the Public Safety Committee. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Chair Rodriguez. Next, we have ordinances for first reading. We have none this evening. Ordinances for amendment, we have none. Ordinances for final passage, we have 3. Mr. Wachowski, can you please read Bill 4 of 2022 into the record?
Bill 4 of 2022 is an ordinance appropriating emergency solutions grant program funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2020 and 2021 and authorizing expenditures of such funds.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns related to Bill 4 of 2022? Hearing none, Mr. Wachowski, could you please call the vote?
Ms. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Madsen,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Ms. Rawls,
yes,
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Bowers.
Yes,
Bill 4 passes.
thank you. Mr. Wachowski, could you please read Bill 5 of 2022 into the record?
Bill 5 of 2022 is an ordinance appropriating community development block grant program funds from the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development for fiscal year 2020 and 2021 and authorizing expenditure of such funds.
Thank you. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns related to Bill 5 of 2022? Hearing none, Mr. Wachowski, could you please call the vote?
Ms. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Madsen,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Ms. Rawls,
yes,
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Ms. Bowers.
Yes,
Bill 5 passes.
thank you. Finally, we have Bill 6 of 2022. Mr. Wachowski, could you please read it into the record?
Bill 6 of 2022 is an ordinance amending Chapter 2-501 Boards, Commissions, and Authorities of Title II Administrative Code to provide for the recording and of meetings of the Harrisburg Zoning Hearing Board and
Comments or concerns related to Bill 6 of 2022?
Just a question and for clarification, since a public comment was mentioned to this effect, on, I don't have, that's line 56 of the ordinance, excuse me, of the bill, which talks about the failure to record meetings under Section A shall not cause the business of a meeting to be void, nor shall it be caused to halt the meeting. And it notes that if it's not recorded, that meeting minutes need to be provided. That is not a way to circumvent that process. Is it, or is it a way just to ensure? Because I think public.
It
isn't.
is not a method to circumvent the process. Things in front of the zoning board and the planning commission are on clocks. And to be fair to the applicants whose rights can be denied or granted, it's basically to stop the process from happening for another 30 days if a technical reason stops a meeting from being recorded, or frankly, the flu. But what it did is it actually requires the minutes be made in a much faster time period than the normal decision would come out of a board, so that there's a document to be seen for what happened there. That was the intent. And I try to look at ordinances not about any particular people sitting on a board, anyone sitting in my office, but for the long-term structure of how the city operates. I mean, you know, you can always assert something is not working quite right, but there's human beings on all sides of things. And they need to look at something to say, what do I have to do? Because the people that wrote this won't always be here to tell them what it means.
Right.
And it has to be clear that there's an obligation on what to do. And so it puts an obligation on the staff of the Planning Bureau to produce minutes much quicker if the meeting was not recorded. So they would be on notice that evening, something happened, and they have to do something different. But it allows the applicant and the board, who are volunteers, to continue with the business of the city on the time frame required. So there's no intent to do anything to circumvent. And I do not believe it would be frankly, I can't say it's 100% not the discretion of the chair of the board. However, they're employees of the city there. That's not the employees of the board that are showing up. The city is paying for people to show and do this. They're not employees of the board. And, it is more likely that the city would be the ones who didn't record it because for whatever reason, because they were down 2 people in the communications office and just can't be everywhere. But the board just couldn't stop that because it's an ordinance that requires it to happen.
Right.
So,
And typically, and minutes are made available on a regular basis currently without.
not really at the zoning level because they've been relying on the transcript all this time. There's a recording available. But there's not been the same thing. They don't approve minutes because they have literally written transcript of the court reporters being paid to do it. And so unlike this board has minutes for every meeting, that is their record. And they have a longer time than meeting to meeting to reach their
produce the record.
decisions by statute. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just wanted the clarification.
Thank you. Are there any other questions, comments, or concerns related to Bill 6 of 2022? Hearing none, Mr. Petrowski, please call the vote.
Ms. Daniels,
Yes.
Ms. Green,
Yes.
Mr. Madsen,
Yes.
Mr. Majors,
Yes.
Ms. Rawls,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
Ms. Bowers.
Yes,
Bill 6 passes.
thank you. Moving on to resolutions, we have Resolution 23 of 2022. Mr. Petrowski, can you please read it into the record?
Resolution 23 of 2022 is a resolution appointing Marita J. Kelly, Director of Financial Management for the City of Harrisburg, to serve as the Dauphin County Tax Collection Committee Delegate for the City of Harrisburg.
Thank you. Resolution 23 of 2022 will move to the Budget and Finance Committee. Old business. During our caucus, we discussed at least 3 items. Councilwoman Daniels, did you want to reiterate your treasury update concerns or questions?
Yes, I wasn't sure if there's anyone here who could answer what's happening with the treasurer's office. I continue to receive complaints about it not being open and people not being able to make payments and things of that nature. And
I am not able to answer that question. I have not had the discussion with Treasury. You would have to talk to the mayor's office, I think, who speaks with the treasurer.
Okay. And you had an inquiry about the recycling bins. Are you fine with Councilman Madsen's response, or was that something you wanted to hear from the administration as well?
well, I think, I guess I just wanted more information about like what went into the decision-making process, because it is a county service, but the city also is involved in deciding where, so what went into the decision? Because, those bins in particular, when it comes to cardboard, they take in the much larger cardboard pieces that don't fit into a recycling bin. And cardboard in particular, once it gets contaminated, it's difficult to recycle. So having the larger cardboard in the smaller recycling pieces will inevitably get wet and soaked. So I just wanted to understand like what went into the decision-making process between the 2 entities and why it was easier to remove rather than because I thought it was being surveilled because it had a sign that said that.
Okay. Well, thank you. We'll try to get a response to your
Mr.
inquiry.
Metzen during the agenda time was saying that he had.
I'm sorry, but what do you need me to clarify?
Yeah, like, can you explain the relationship between, like, how was the decision made? Because I understand.
Oh, that I don't know. I can just tell you from being a resident up there, it's hard to recycle because it's always full and there's just a lot of illegal dumping that happens there. And I had been saying things to the administration for a while about it, like this has consistently been a problem. And then, eventually the bins were gone and I got an inquiry about it and I asked and they said, well, it's becoming such a hot spot for illegal dumping. We had to change strategy. But the internal discussions, I wasn't privy to that. It's just been a consistent problem in that part of the community for a while.
Because for my experiences, because I use that much more than I use the city recycling, just because it's actually easier for me. Whenever it's overloaded, it is dumping because technically once it's outside of the bin, it's dumping, but it's dumping of recyclables, right? Which
Right.
kind of illustrated the need of more bins rather
Correct.
than fewer. I mean, there were every once in a while, there would be like a huge dumper that dumped, but
I do believe that happened in 2021 was an uptick in things that were not recyclable. It was starting to dump couches and other things
Mhm.
right behind them, right around them. And I understood the property owner complained because it's private property at the end of the day. And the city was up there numerous times having to deal with that issue. I don't know what this discussion was. I know it's the county's bins. I
right.
know they took them. I use that all the time too, frankly. And I went to another location and they weren't there either at one of their other advertised locations. So I don't really know what the strategy is going forward. But
Yeah.
that other location was outside the city and they were gone as well. And so, but it is private property, which you have to have the agreement with the landowner to use. I don't know if they're in discussions or not. We could ask Public Works to get an answer to that question for council, whether there's discussions for another location. There's still a couple locations for glass because the city does control that, but we had to remove our glass recycling, which is the only thing the city had up there. And I think there's still one by the Mill Works. There's one at Public Works buildings. And I think a third location, but again, Public Works could answer that question.
Yeah, 6th Street Firehouse.
6th Street Firehouse. So, but there's a couple announcements, I think, both on the county and the city's website, but very brief about the removal without a lot of explanation.
Yeah, there wasn't any explanation, and from my, because I saw the sign, I just assumed that they were being monitored, so that when there is.
And when I
illegal-
went up and found it was gone, frankly, there was still a bunch of furniture piled that someone came in the night and dumped there again. And that's the real issue, is the illegal
Yeah.
dumpers. So,
Yeah, so I think I really think Public Works should look into alternative options, because it's one thing to go to Uptown Plaza to dump like my television box. It's another to drive all the way over to some of the other locations to do that. And I know that I personally would probably take the easier, like the less time consuming path, which is not recycling. And I imagine a lot of people might be in that same position. And I think we need to not reduce the amount of recycling we do in the city and try to find ways to increase it.
well, the city does have a recycling coordinator, and we can ask the mayor's office to, as a business administrator, to make an inquiry on what the plan going forward is.
Okay,
Thank you.
that suffices. You're welcome. Thank you. And then finally, Councilman Majors, you had an inquiry about the quarterly report from the police for the first quarter of the year.
Yes, just if we could get a timeline or a timeframe as to when we could expect the quarterly report from the police department. I know at our last meeting, Councilman Rodriguez, we got public safety reports from the Bureau of Fire, but outstanding would be, I guess, the Bureau of Codes, if we get a report from them, and then the police bureau. So any sense of a time frame or?
I do not. I believe the ordinance that has reports puts it 30 days after the end of the quarter, but I'm not 100% sure of that. In order for the data to be gathered, so we're not there yet for police. There is no similar ordinance for fire or
Fire,
codes.
right.
And I think this is a relationship that's sort of forming to come into more routine reporting. But I will make the inquiry with the mayor's office to get the police to get an answer on when to expect the quarterly report. And I'll have them forward that to the city clerk.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other old business? Hearing none, any new business? Okay, I just wanted to note, Tri-County Community Action will host their 10th annual Great Harrisburg Litter Cleanup on Saturday, April 23rd, 2022, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. You can find more information on Tri-County's website related to the different locations you can register. I also wanted to note that April 11th through April 17th is Black Maternal Health Week. It was founded and led by Black Mamas Matter Alliance. The month of April is also recognized in the United States as National Minority Health Month, which is a month-long initiative to advance health equity across the country on behalf of all racial and ethnic minorities. For additional information on activities and virtual events that are in recognition of Black Maternal Health Week, please visit Black Mamas Matter Alliance at blackmamasmatter.org. Any other new business? Hearing none, seeing none, it is 6:45. I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. We are adjourned.